Hello, my name is Ashley Homestead, and I'm a woman in long term recovery. And I'm grateful to have the opportunity to be here speaking in front of you today. Um, Freedom from active use is what has truly afforded me this great and wonderful opportunity. Without freedom from active use, I would have never believed that I could do even one of the things that I do today. Would have never dreamt that any of those things would be possible. Would have never thought for even a second that I would want to do these things. My future has worked out in ways that I could have never imagined. And I'm so grateful for that and so happy to have been asked to share about it. Um, so, as I mentioned, I'm a woman in long term recovery. Some of the gifts that I have today are the fact that I get to be an independent business owner. And I get to work with my two best friends at Time to Rise Counseling and Wellness, a business that we opened together all on our own, and we get to help other people who are like us, which is the best feeling that I could really think of. Um, and, what's better than being happy with what you do every day and going to work with your two best friends? I really just can't think of anything else, actually, that would be better than that. Um, But without freedom from active use, I wouldn't have been able to get the education that I needed or the work experience that I needed to even think that I had a chance, beyond a shadow of a doubt, to create anything like this because it has been hard and so difficult. Um, but because of freedom from active use, I have been able to go to school and get my bachelor's degree. I've been able to get my graduate degree just recently, actually, and go forward to apply for mental health counseling to get that license as well so that we can soon provide that service. That is definitely much needed within the state of Maine. Again, so much more beautiful of a future than I could have ever imagined for myself is occurring, but I never would have thought that any of this was possible because I never thought that freedom from active use was possible when I was actively using. It was a very dark place to be in, and I really, honestly, I saw no way out at the time. Um, my past began similarly, I think, to many people who struggle with substance use disorder, having trauma and mental health disorder untreated, dealing with stigma, believing that I'm not supposed to talk about it. I'm not supposed to seek treatment for any problems that I have. That led to me seeking my own forms of treatment to try and treat the problems that I have. And ultimately, that's how, I ended up discovering substances. They partially treated me, I suppose, at the time. They worked for me for a time until they didn't anymore. And that's why I say I saw no way out. It seemed that no matter what I did, how much I used, no matter like what way I used, there was never enough. There was just no way that I could forget about all the things that I had done, that had been done. There was no way that I could stop feeling the ways that I felt. There was no amount great enough. And at that point, I had finally realized that substances were no longer working for me. It took a long time to get there. Not until my mid-20s did I really come to that realization. And they talk about jails, institutions, and death. All of those became realities for me several times before I came to that realization. And I am grateful for those experiences, which may seem strange to say, but I am. Because of those experiences, those have afforded me some other great parts of my future that I could have never imagined, like being on the board at the Bangor Area Recovery Network, getting to help people there as well, and do advocacy work in the community. Also, being on the board of jail visitors for PCJ, being able to provide a voice for those that don't have one in a facility that is a part of my past as well. So, again, just I can't convey how grateful I am to have the life that I have today. It's one that I could have never dreamt of. So I guess in ending today, I will just thank you again so much for allowing me to share my story with you.
Hi, my name is Christy Ricker, and I am the Tribal Public Health Liaison serving District Public Health in the state of Maine. I am honored to moderate today's discussion with our panel of experts discussing efforts currently underway in the tribal community to build a continuum of treatment for who are experiencing substance use disorder. And we will also be discussing the collaborative model treatment being developed that combines traditional indigenous healing practices with Western models. And the importance of this model for our tribal communities. So joining us today are the following speakers. We have Lisa Sakabason, who is Wabanaki Public Health Director of Programs and External Affairs. And Lisa is the former director of the State Office of Minority Health, and Lisa has spent her career working with populations who live with systemic health inequities and disparities. Our next presenter is Dr. Benjamin Hurst, who is a physician and medical director at the Penobscot Nation Health Department and adjunct faculty member at the Center for Family Medicine residency program. Dr. Hurst is a longtime supporter of the integration of traditional and Western medicine into treatment and recovery, and is committed to developing programs that serve perspectives. Is Wabanaki Public Health's Culture and Language Program Manager, and Newell is a fluent Passamaquoddy language teacher and remains committed to language revitalization efforts. And Newell understands the deep relationship with culture, identity, connection, and wellness. And I'm going to turn things over to Lisa.
Thank you, Christy. Dungok, hello everybody. My name is Lisa Sakabason. I have the pleasure of representing Wabanaki Public Health here today. Wabanaki Public Health, along with the tribal chiefs, have co-led an effort to develop a Wabanaki and Recovery Center. Over the past 5 years, the tribal chiefs and Wabanaki Public Health came together to discuss the challenges of substance use disorder in our communities. We discussed these challenges and the impact that addiction has had in our communities. The issues are real. We are struggling. We have been struggling for generations. And we gave voice to these struggles. More importantly, we discussed the opportunities. We, the people who are most impacted with trauma, substance abuse, and health disparities, are the very people who hold the solutions for recovery and wellness. Collectively, Wabanaki Public Health and tribal chiefs began on this journey to create opportunities for our Wabanaki people to recover, be well, and be free from addiction. Tribal people at this point in time, something we're working hard to correct, have no available treatment and recovery programs that are culturally appropriate and that understand and utilize Indigenous healing models or integrate the family and community into programs. All of these elements are critically important to the healing of Indigenous people. Wabanaki people, even today, must travel many miles across our borders, both internationally and state, to receive the services needed. So when there's an absence of what is needed to be well, we must come together to serve we must create. Over the past 12 to 14 months, Wabanaki Public Health has led the Recovery Consortium, which is a group that has come together for the planning of recovery in our communities. This effort was funded by our federal partner, HRSA, and we've been deeply honored to have the support of our federal partners, particularly Federal HHS Region 1, and then of course our national partners, HRSA and SAMHSA and CDC. So this consortium that we have pulled together is a diverse planning team of approximately 25 to 30 Indigenous and non-Indigenous people. We have tribal chiefs and health leaders, culture and language keepers, elders, young people, people in recovery, health planners, and others. Each person represented on this panel today are active consortium members. We pro-COVID met face-to-face every month, and sometimes more often through other communication channels, to discuss the steps needed to create a Wabanaki Recovery and Wellness Center. This center, we want it to be a place that reconnects our people to culture and language while receiving the treatment needed to address substance use disorder in a culturally centered and appropriate way. This consortium team has led this hard work over the past year, and we're well on our way of creating our first recovery and treatment center here in Maine for Wabanaki people. Our center will be located in Millinocket. We are in the process of securing the property needed to deliver the services needed. We are excited about this process. We have learned a lot through the process, and we remain humble as we move forward. Many people have asked us, why Millinocket? There are several reasons, and probably too many reasons we can talk about today, but I want to talk about the main reason and what is the most important reason from my perspective. It is the proximity to Mount Katahdin, a place that holds deep cultural significance to Wabanaki people. This place, this spiritual place in Maine, will be an important piece to our recovery. We hope to integrate our outside environment into the healing and treatment programs. This is an important component to many Indigenous treatment programs across the United States and Canada. We are eager to work with our local partners in Millinocket. There are a number of amazing people and efforts in this town. Breaking the Cycle, a women's recovery program, and home, and peer-to-peer, a recovery support network, are just to name two. We at Wabanaki Public Health know that in order to be successful in our efforts, we must serve and collaborate with local partners. We must envision a system of recovery not only for Wabanaki people, but for all people in this region. Supporting one another's efforts, communicating regularly, and building our relationships with each other has been a bright light in this work and something we remain deeply committed to. We value the ongoing work, and we're eager to move forward to be of service to Wabanaki people and to others served in the Millinocket region. Chi-Wiliwan, to all of you for listening, and for Christy for moderating, and to my fellow colleagues on this panel.
Okay, so let me see.
Would you like me to start?
Yes, I'm pulling up your presentation now as we speak.
Okay, I'll just take the time, a little bit of time, to introduce myself, if I could. So my name is Ben Hirth. Some people call me Dr. Ben. First of all, I want to thank the governor's office for giving us to be able to speak on a topic that we're passionate about. And for me, there's an initiative that's called Makui. And just so you know, the name Makui, actually, it's sort of a word that means together. I just want to tell you a little short story that sort of got this idea rolling. I started residency at the Center for Family Medicine in Bangalore 2007. And at that time, I I met Eric Brown, Dr. Eric Brown, and we had a dilemma. So basically, at that point, Center for Family Medicine was one of the only practices in the upper third of the state of Maine that that had an MAT program or a Suboxone program, as well as an obstetrical program. So they got referrals from all over the state, from up north and out east, and and basically we would have mothers come down for the pregnancy to get their prenatal care, but as well as receiving their MAT program and recovery program based out of Bangor. And so you essentially had young, healthy, highly motivated women that came from all over the state. And this included our different, our 5 tribal nations within those areas too. And Eric had asked me a question, basically asking, so here we have some young women who are otherwise healthy and doing really well, and we saw them through their pregnancy. But how can we get them to transition back home? And it was a good dilemma to ask. It was a very appropriate question to ask. And so we set on a collaborative effort. We started to talk with the different tribal nations within the state of Maine and see if there's an effort that we could come together on. And so that was the foundation of Marquee. Next slide, please. Um, so who we are. Let's see here. So essentially, I just wanted to mention the background. We are the collaboration between the clinics, the communities, the tribal leadership. One of the things I always point out in this collaboration is it's actually the next step in an ancient collaboration. You know, the way I understand it, the Wabanaki Confederacy, which is an ancient partnership among the tribes, not only here in the state of Maine, but also extending to Canada and even further south also. So the hope is that to have a collaborative effort with all the different tribes, the clinics, as well as some of our partners, Wabanaki Health and Wellness and Wabanaki Public Health. And then finally, the stakeholder is the Northern Light Eastern Maine Medical Center, who have been instrumental in acquisition and tracking of some of the efforts that we've done. Next slide, please. This slide basically will show the team makeup. And the team makeup are the executive team, the project development team, the evaluation team, and then the community advisory board. Next slide, please. Goals. There's basically three large goals. One of them is to increase the community level capacity. So to actually treat opiate use disorder within each of the communities, we wanted to be able to assist in increasing their ability to treat that. Also the screening and behavioral health, so things that are on site already, you know, trying to bring into practice some of the evidence-based practices. And then lastly, to coordinate and expand overdose reversal strategies, namely naloxone. Next slide. So essentially one arm of our efforts has been coordination or collaboration, either way you put it. So in a big part of that is trying to formalize partnerships. And this would be an agreement, and really we had to start with the tribal chiefs. You know, tribal chiefs, I had to approach each one of them and see if we had buy-in from each of the tribes to work together to try to boost everybody's program up. And this also involves the community themselves and the providers. And this is one unique thing that we tried to do, is to actually involve the providers within each of the clinics as a part of this collaboration as well. Next slide. And then the next goal, or the next arm, was to actually access the assessment and treatment of opiate use disorder. And really the idea is to screening is a big part of it. And Dr. Eric Brown always talks about this, something called SBIRT, which is essentially trying to find people where they are early in the process, more than necessarily people who come specifically for opiate use disorder. So trying to catch people early so we could even maybe prevent that from getting to a point where their full-on addiction has occurred. Next slide. And the last arm is the naloxone. And Christy Ricker has been an essential part of this in developing and conducting culturally significant trainings on naloxone administration, education materials, overdose response, and so on. So next slide. So the process we generally used is we had all of we had the five nations to do. They each had their own tribal facility, their own clinic, and so we wanted to do an assessment. So get an idea about what each place has, as far as providers, as far as medical staff, as far as administration, and so on. And not only that, so that's actually the nuts and bolts of it all, but we also want to kind of get a feel for where is everybody within the staff as far as their treatment or our treatment of opiate use disorder. And so it was really about trying to get a really good feel for how people are doing in each of their clinics. And then to provide training. So we offer things like SBIRT, motivational interviewing, MAT, as well as naloxone training. So sort of sculpting it to the needs of each of the individual sites. And then lastly, the sustainability. So actually, before we go there, implementation of those things too. And that's really where we're going this year, is to try to implement those things. And lastly, into sort of a sustainability, a mode of sustainability. So how are these practices going to continue forward? And part of it is our community advisory board, as well as this idea of sharing info. So again, the partnership goes beyond this project is the goal. Next slide, please. So some of the challenges. One thing that is of the utmost is that each of our clinics and our communities are sovereign nations. And one thing we had to do was basically work with each of the sovereign nations and try to gain a collaborative partnership, which can be challenging sometimes. So that was a big part of the beginning of this. The other thing is staff availability. So how available are things on site, as well as behavioral health and pharmacy. That's variable for each one of the sites, and then being culturally significant also. I'm actually going to skip. Can you skip ahead 2 slides, Christy? So this basically is the baseline of what we found with each of the clinics. And since that time, we've actually gained another partner with Wabanaki Health and Wellness. And we can look through that later. And then next slide. So what have we accomplished? We basically accomplished, we've done 6 site assessment visits. We've done 5 training sessions, including most of our partners, excluding the 2 Passamaquoddy tribes so far. And then we've held 5 different community advisory boards and then attended 2 health fairs. And then I just want to talk real quick about training. One of the things we found is that we train SBIRT, we train motivational interviewing, MAT, but we've also included a talking circle, which is a significant, a culturally significant meeting of sorts. And essentially, it really gets everybody on the same page. And we do this with the whole clinic, from front to back. The idea being is that we're not just reaching out to the providers, we're not just reaching out to administration, we're actually reaching out to the clinic as a whole and trying to sort of see where people are and give voice to those things. And so the talking circle really adds a layer to that. So in our 3rd year, we have a lot of implementation to do for the upcoming year. We have some website, as well as some videos that we want to do sort of tie all these things together and sort of leave these things to be used going forward. And one of one of the things that I would love to sort of see it continuing forward is a community advisory board, which essentially is made up of clinic staff, providers, community experts, and some of the interested parties within the tribes to come together on a regular basis to not only talk about what's going on in each of the communities and the availability of services, but also to look at some of the materials and some of the implementation plans and really comb through them for their own communities. And in the end, have something that feels meaningful to each of the communities and individual to respect each of the sovereign nations also. So all in all, it's been a good journey, and we've got one more year to sort of bring things back together and see how this goes. So thank you very much for the time. I appreciate it.
Okay, Newell, we'll turn things over to you now.
Okay, thank you. Tangaklu Psidiwen, Newell Louis Delewis, Pestumukad Nanel. Nugujao Zibayig, Medak Nigug Nagan, Nugutkug, Unumakadi Niwig, Tigej, Kidwest Waman Gilwo, Augustumuin, Naga, Wanas Agawin, Pizon. So I just said I'm Newell Louis, Passamaquoddy, and I come from Zibayik, Madakmigug, or Indian Township, and Maliseet in New Brunswick. And I now live in Pembroke, Maine. And I wanted to talk with you about the misuse of alcohol and drugs. But first, I want to just say thank you to Christy and the other co-presenters, Lisa and Ben, for a great presentation today. I thank you for that. And also thank you for the space to allow us to come together and talk about this really important issue. So what I wanted to talk about at this time was the importance of culture and language. And Ben touched upon it a little bit, as did Lisa. But I think to find a comfort zone within your own recovery is, crucial. And I've been in long-term recovery for over 30 years. And, it wasn't when I came into recovery, I was there, but I didn't have anything to grasp onto. And what I found over the years is the more I expanded myself to culture and language, right, is that I was able to connect with my ancestors. So what that means is that I learned a lot of my culture and language from my ancestors and also the mentors that have been in my life as well, both language mentors, cultural mentors, and a lot of them, have passed on, but I carry on their teachings. I'm a pipe carrier for the people. So what that means for me is that I carry a medicine for our tribal people and actually anyone who needs that medicine. And what I try to do is not give them that, not make them take that medicine, but I want them to be able to find their way in their own time. And for me, what happened was I was probably 8, maybe 9 years into recovery before I went into a sweat lodge. And when I came out, I was a completely different person. And since that time, I've dedicated my life to finding my language and culture, because what happened was a lot of that has been removed from a lot of the individuals in our tribal nations. And we have to find a way to come back. And I think what Ben had mentioned also is that if you can find a way to connect and belong, it's much easier to find out who you are and why you do the things you do. So, you know, we talk about Uldakewagan, the medicine, the ceremonies. And we also, you know, what happened. So what that allows me to do is find a way to reconnect and relearn how to honor and pray for a peaceful way of life. Sankewi Dahazawagan. So that means to be peaceful or have peace in your life. And if we can reconnect people in ways or expose them to treatments that include culture and language, it's going to give them more opportunity to recover. You know, when people hear the drum for the first time, some people just automatically connect with that. When they hear the language spoken, they automatically connect with that also. So you find these ways of connecting with people on their terms, you know, and I understand there's a lot to recovery. But for me, and what I've seen in the teachings of our culture is that we also have things to offer and to bring to the table. And, you know, the sweat lodge, the smudging, the talking sticks, as Dr. Ben talked about, those are ways to connect with people. So people have the opportunity to see that there are other ways of connecting and finding their way to recovery. I think it's really important that we explore all of these, and I'm happy that I could be here today to talk with you about all of this, and I'm willing to answer any questions regarding that as well. Chiwalewan.
Thank you, Newell, and to everybody else on the panel, Lisa and Dr. Ben, for your wonderful presentations. At this point, I will open up the chat to accept any questions for the panel participants. If there is. We have not received any questions at this point, so. We do have one question. It is, what can we do to help as the general public and other professionals?
That's a big question.
Who would like to take that question?
I guess I can sort of speak. We have a short amount of time, but I guess the support is really crucial. Also, you know, I think, you know, a lot of these things take place within the nations themselves. So to physically help would be really difficult. But I think to be supportive of some of the efforts and you know, I think there is something to moral support, and there is something to actually you know, being available and such. Because one thing I'm discovering is that even in our own programs that we're trying to develop, we do need collaboration with outside agencies, and I think that's where I would look to is you know, to be receptive, and if we need help, we can absolutely reach out, and hopefully we'll have somebody on the other side to be able to help us out with those things. So that's how I would see. I don't know if you guys have a different view or something to add.
Yeah, Dr. Ben, I don't have a different view. This is Lisa. I just have something to add. I would say, you know, it has been a very long time where our Indigenous people, our Wabanaki people, are seeking services in many of the organizations, programs that you work in. And I think it's really important. What can you do? What can you do at home is to become educated, to become aware of what we are doing, but also what works for Indigenous communities, for Indigenous people, what is important. There are many programs throughout the US and in Canada where we're looking to help develop our programs here in Maine. And I would encourage people to become aware of those works, of that, the issues that we're dealing with, and to do that education for yourself, because that education will help you in serving the people that you're seeing. At this time, you may be seeing the people that we are serving, and we want to make sure that wherever they go, they are treated with compassion and respect and cultural humility. So just an additive thing, Dr. Ben, certainly not a difference in perspective.
Mhm.
And
I'll add,
oh, okay.
okay, so I'll just add that, I think to the general public also, that, you have to be conscientious of where everyone else is coming from. You don't know the trauma that people have been through. So I like to take people, I don't ever judge people for, what they do or how they behave, because we don't know where they've been or what they've been through. I have a lot of relatives that have that have had addiction as well. So, we have a lot of intergenerational trauma, but also we can have intergenerational healing as well. So that's why I talk about my ancestors that have taught me through ceremony.
Like that.
So we have just a few minutes left, but one last question. What do we feel some of the challenges are for the coming year in the projects that we're working on?
I think I would point to the. Go ahead, Lisa. I think you do well. Go ahead.
Well, I don't know if you're going to share the same perspective, Ben, but you'll go next. I would say funding. We are in great search of resources to help support our work and to assure that we can move forward with all of our work, and to make sure that it doesn't end when a particular grant funding cycle ends, that this is a piece of work and a system that will be supported in perpetuity, if you will, forever, until the resources are not needed anymore and our people are well. And that's going to be a long time. So I would say funding, the resources, and also workforce, and to assure that we have a strong workforce to respond to the services that we need to provide to our folks.
Okay, so we have just 1 minute left. I just want to again thank all of the panel participants for all of your insights and all of the questions and comments and things. I'm sorry that we weren't able to get to all of them. I will stay in the chat and answer some of the questions as much as I can, just about basic things. So following the presentation.
Christy, you will be sharing the resources as well, perhaps, in terms of Dr. Ben's presentation?
Yes. Yep. Yes, I have sent them over to the Summit staff so that they can upload them to the resources page as well.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Thanks all.
Thank you, everybody.
Hi, my name is Will. I'm a person in recovery, and I'm here to share my story with you. I discovered drugs at a very early age, and in particularly had a love for opiates. I remember, as soon as I put opiates in my body, I was relieved from, a lot of like fear that I lived with and carried with, like in my everyday life. I felt like there was something wrong with me. I just didn't know what it was or how to recognize it or what to do about it. And that felt like the solution. And I feel like it took the matter of choice right out of the picture because I kind of never envisioned myself going to the place I was going to go. And where that took me is, first prisons and jails all over the country. I would get locked up, I would get out, and I would start using again. Um, it took me to a couple different psych wards. It took me to overdoses. I think I had over 20 overdoses where I got revived from Narcan. It took me to homelessness. The last 3 years of my using, I was homeless right here in Portland, living down Preble Street. And where things started to turn was I got, I was in jail, I got out, and I was only out 4 days, and I went back, and my stepfather had died. So I wasn't able to be out long enough to, see him or talk to him while he was dying. And I kind of just went into my cell and I dropped to my knees and I started crying and I asked whoever, whatever, the universe, God, or whatever, for help. And about a week later, I was offered the drug court program, which I decided to do. I felt kind of at this moment, I felt like pretty determined to want to go a different direction in life. And that was great. They had it set up for me. So when I walked out of jail, I went into a sober house. And drug court kind of gave me a level of like accountability, but also they made room for compassion and understanding and, vulnerability and a lot of structure, which I kind of definitely needed at that time. Um, and then there was PRCC. That was a big, big, important piece of the puzzle to my recovery. I would come here on a daily basis. I would build connection here. They offered yoga, which really attracted me to, and yoga was a huge part of me getting sober. It kind of cleansed my body, helped me stay in the present moment, relieve me of that fear and anxiety. And then there was the 12 steps. The 12-step program kind of like it taught me about myself. It helped me understand and recognize what's going on with me, understand my fears, which was super important because I think that's why I used for so long is I was afraid of everything and they couldn't, like fear couldn't get me sober, so I had to discover love in myself in order to get sober so I could be afraid of those things like going back to jail or overdosing and dying. Yeah, so in the last 4 years, I've kind of built up this little beautiful life. I have a partner who's in recovery and a yoga teacher like me, and I do the 12 steps. I have a sponsor. I sponsor other people. I have two amazing children, both very young, and I'm very present for their life. I've reconnected with my family, and I have a group of friends that show up for me, anytime I need them. And yeah, there's many paths to recovery, and this is my path, and I just want to tell you, there is hope for anybody out there. Thank you.
So the chair of the state Treatment Court Steering Committee. I want to thank you for joining us here this morning at the Governor's Opioid Summit, and joining me on the panel for this particular session. I have Elizabeth Simone from Maine Pretrial Services. So that's the agency that provides the case managers for the treatment courts. Amy Curtis is with us as well from Blue Willow Family Counseling. Good morning, Amy. Blue Willow is one of 4 treatment agencies that have contracts to serve the treatment courts here in Maine. And last but certainly not least is Abby Frucci. Abby is also from Washington County, more specifically Machias. She's on the board of directors with the National Association of Drug Court Professionals. I know we don't have a lot of time. I'm going to discuss a little bit about the history of the treatment courts, also about what we do and who we are and how we do it and why we do it. And everyone needs to understand that day-long trainings have been devoted to some of the topics that we'll discuss here today. But I'm hopeful that you'll at least get a taste of what we do and how we do it, and you'll have a better understanding. We'll certainly do our best to field some questions at the end, and I understand our statewide treatment court coordinator, Mr. Richard Gordon, is, at least I'm told he is, fielding some questions on the platform. Mr. Clark, whose testimony you heard a moment ago, gave a heartfelt account of the success that he had in recovery. His stories and others like them are real. They really are the best evidence of the success of our program. There's many stories, and they're all unique in their own way. Nationally, 65% of inmates have a substance use disorder. We spend close to $80 billion a year annually on incarceration. And the cold truth is that in our country, people with a substance use disorder are more likely to be jailed than treated. That places a tremendous strain on budgets, on families, and certainly on society in general. And in an effort to effectively treat instead of simply to punish, and in recognition that in most instances, the substance use disorder gave rise to the criminal behavior, treatment courts seek both to hold people accountable and to treat the disorder of the participants. Since their inception back in Miami, down in Florida in 1989, treatment courts have proven to be the most successful intervention in the nation's history in the criminal justice system. They've enjoyed success nationally, and they enjoy success here in Maine as well. In Maine, the drug courts began back in Cumberland County in 1996 with a pilot program called Project Exodus. I can recall vividly as a young lawyer here in Washington County when the so-called poster client, if you will, or participant of that particular program, a Miss Ball, came to Washington County here at the courthouse, having been invited by Judge Romay in an effort to start the drug court over which I now preside. She moved those of us with her story, the challenges that she had faced, and the success that she had through that program of ridding herself of the grip of addiction. Her desire for change and her desire for help were palpable then, and they're certainly memorable to this day. At the time, to be certain, drug courts were completely new. They challenged the methods and the manner of the criminal justice system. They called upon the typical players in an adversarial system to work within a team setting. And they called upon all to shift their philosophy. The handcuffs, if you will, were delayed, but exchanged for a helping hand. The once prevailing philosophy that the criminal happened to have an addiction gave way to the reality that the person before the court and in the criminal justice system was ill and happened instead to have committed a crime. And so where the court once ordered treatment with the stern, better yourself and good luck, the courts now are being asked to guide the individual to treatment and to hold the person accountable throughout the way. In the typical criminal case, the probationer, for instance, was not again seen by the court unless he or she violated. And now the court is being asked to hold the person accountable on a weekly basis. The purpose was to not to deter through punishment, but rather to change and improve through treatment, to improve the individual and then indirectly his family and the community by leading him or her into a path of recovery and holding him or her accountable throughout the process. In Maine, there are there's currently 11 treatment courts. We seek to treat those in the criminal justice system who have either a substance use disorder and or a mental health disorder and who are considered high risk and high needs. Now, those are terms of art, and I'm hopeful that Ms. Simone and Ms. Curtis will perhaps touch upon just what that means when they present. Of the 11 treatment courts in Maine, there's 6 adult treatment, drug treatment courts. There's 3 family recovery courts. There's 1 co-occurring court and 1 veteran treatment court. Nationally in Maine, 10% of the population are veterans. That's more than the national average. And so in recognition of that, the steering committee is committed to creating in each treatment court a veteran track. Those efforts are underway and have begun. I think in Washington County, we have 1 applicant who's awaiting admission. He'll be moving here from away in order to participate in the program. In 2019, we had 363 participants. That was just over 11% more than 2018. And we saw 79 folks graduate successfully from the program in that particular year. And that's not 79 of 363 because folks come in at different times and the length of their participation varies depending on their needs. What we do is we try to identify folks early because the research says that if you can get folks into recovery sooner rather than later, they're more likely to have success. Treatment and case management administer risk assessments and other evidence-based evaluations to assess the applicant's suitability for the program. The defense lawyer of record and the DA who's handling the case would negotiate a plea agreement. That agreement would involve both a so-called good result upon completion and a so-called bad result in the event that the client is expelled from the program. Now, if the person is charged with a crime that's suitable for the program, that is a crime that's not an excludable offense, the person would enter a plea to the charged crime and then be admitted into the program. And sentencing in that instance would be continued day to day. Convictions in Maine do not attach until sentencing occurs. And so the participant in the program has a very good and decent opportunity to avoid a conviction for the serious crime that landed him in the criminal justice system in the first place. Our program seeks to change behavior, not just to punish conduct. We monitor progress through frequent but random testing and observed testing. And we reward good behavior in the program and we sanction folks when they make poor decisions and are dishonest. When they apply to the program and during the admission hearing, they're made aware by the court up front that despite their disorder, they have the absolute ability to remain honest and show up. And those are the kind of the foundational prerequisites to their recovery. They're also made aware that in the event that the team works harder at the recovery than they do, that their continued participation might be at issue and they could be returned to the regular criminal docket for processing in that sense. They attend IOP weekly. They have individual therapy. They have regular check-ins with case management. They're expected to have a job or be in school or perform weekly community service. They have a curfew. They attend a set number of self-help meetings per week, and they perform homework assignments as well. And they're tested on a regular basis, and they're required to come before the court. In most instances on a weekly basis, but some courts do that bi-weekly so that the judge can have an interaction with them for 3 to 5 minutes each week to address how they're doing in their progress, any challenges that they've had, and more importantly, to see how they're applying the skills that they're supposed to be learning in treatment. The title of the presentation of the summit is Compassion, Community, and Connection. Understanding that the power of threes are memorable. My three are collaboration, commitment, and compassion, and not entirely different. Collaboration simply means that we work together in a team setting to wrap the individual services designed to meet the individual's needs and to minimize risk. The team consists of, I think there's a slide for this that Richard can put up. The team has a representative from the DA's office. There's a defense attorney on the team, probation, treatment, case management, and the judge. And some courts also have a law enforcement officer on the team. Just like in any other team setting, each member plays a vital role. The team communicates regularly. We meet in person before each client session to discuss weekly progress. And I'm reminded of the posters in elementary school gyms for the acronym TEAM. Not only is there no I in team, but together everyone achieves more. I recall seeing those in some of the elementary school gyms, watching my children play basketball. There's also a slide I think that Richard can put up, and it's in your materials if he's unable to do that, that shows what the team member impact is. And there's no need for me to read that to you. But the point is that the research establishes that the success of the program really depends upon the commitment of each team member to do his or her job. So what do we commit to? We commit to, in the drug courts and the treatment courts, the 10 key components. That's also included in the materials that you should have. Again, there's no reason for me to read all of that to you, but those are the foundational cornerstones of the program. And in short, the National Association says this repeatedly: if you don't follow them, you can't call yourself a treatment court. So we make a commitment to follow those 10 key components. We also commit to the evidence-based practices. We trust the science and the research. And since those things are changing frequently, since the understanding of addiction and the effect that it has on the body and the brain changes frequently, we also commit to regular and annual training so we can stay abreast of the best practices. We also commit to the recognition, and this has changed over the course of time. Initially, it wasn't like this. Initially, drug courts were abstinence programs. Now we recognize that Suboxone, methadone, and Vivitrol are not actually replacement or substitute drugs. They're actually medications prescribed by doctors, proven to successfully treat substance use disorders, particularly when they're administered in conjunction with the types of intensive treatment that our treatment courts provide. And we also commit to the real fact that the treatment court is not a get out of jail card, but instead an opportunity for these folks to do the real and difficult work that recovery involves. We try to do this with compassion. Compassion literally means that we suffer together. My grandfather told me, he was a doctor in Washington County, well known throughout the region on both sides of the border back when there were fewer restrictions on going back and forth. And I didn't appreciate him for his profession because he died when I was 13. But I appreciated him really because of his knowledge of the golf swing. I remember getting a lesson from him when I was 9 on the third tee in the Calais Golf Course at St. Croix Country Club. And I told him that he was smart. And he said to me quickly that I'm no smarter than anybody else. I just know different things. And I didn't really understand what that meant at the time. But over the course of my career, I've developed an appreciation for that comment. Drug courts recognize really that empathy and compassion are needed, that they're necessary to assist people with recovery. And they're necessary also for team members to recognize that no one team member has all the answers. It's necessary for that type of collaboration to occur. Now, Mr. Clark, in his testimony, talked also about how things in the court that he was in, I assume it was Cumberland County, I'm not sure, done with compassion. And he has given a simple, but really an accurate assessment of the commitment that team members make to assist these folks. And why do we do it? Why would we spend many hours every day and every week to assist people who have landed themselves in the criminal justice system. And so why do we convene a team of players from different backgrounds to ask them to work together in an otherwise adversarial system? And the answer really is quite simple. The answer is treatment courts work. And the data establishes that definitively. It establishes that the outcomes are significantly better for those folks who participate in drug court as opposed to other high-risk, high-need individuals in the very same system. And just to give you an idea of some of the statistics, those who graduate from our program reoffend at a rate of just 16% compared to 28 to 74%, or I'm sorry, 47% of high-risk, high-need individuals that are sent to the Department of Corrections here in the state of Maine. 75% of our graduates remained arrest-free compared to just 30% of those who are released from prison not having gone through a comparable program. And they reduce crime, they reunite families, and we also save money. And finally, and most importantly, we save lives. The transformation, if you've ever been to a drug court graduation, the transformation is real, and it's visible, and it's palpable. And so I'd encourage you, if you can, go to a county where we have a treatment court and see when the next graduations are. Those are open to the public, and you get an idea just how significant of an impact our programs have on treating people that want to be in recovery. So I see Abby Frucci's here with us. I'm going to hand things over to her. Abby is from Washington County. She currently is the substance use response coordinator for Community Caring Collaborative. It focuses on the development of a recovery and employment program and community training around needs related to substance use disorders. She's a licensed provider herself. She served as the treatment provider for our court here in Washington County for many, many years. Her efforts there were tireless, and her insights were appreciated then and greatly valued now. Abby is, in fact, a graduate of our program, and she's the first adult drug treatment court graduate in the country to sit on the National Board of Directors. So her story, like the stories of others who have found and succeeded at their own path of recovery, her story really is our inspiration. Abby?
Thank you, Judge Mitchell, and thank you for that great overview of treatment courts across our state and really across the nation. It really touches on the impact that they have with our community members that experience substance use disorder. And as you had shared, my name is Abby Frucci, and I'm a 2006 graduate of the Washington County Adult Drug Treatment Court. I'm here speaking to you today as a professional who works in the field of substance use disorder, as a graduate student working towards a degree in social work, as a mother of 3 beautiful children, as a wife and as a daughter, and as the first graduate, as you had shared, that holds a position with the board of directors for the National Association, all because of one Maine treatment court. And it was because of that treatment court, because of the judge that saw potential in me when I could not see it in myself. It was because of the supports that were shared with me that I'm here today talking to you. And so I just want to take a moment to thank all of you that are viewing this presentation today for the work that you're doing in the field of substance use and recovery, and for all of the support that you extend to treatment courts across our state. It is so valuable. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself and why treatment courts have such a profound impact on my life. Like the stories of so many who have experienced substance use disorder, my life began to unravel, and ultimately I found myself involved in the criminal justice system. As a mother of a 3-month-old at that time, I was suffering from severe substance use disorder, and I was absolutely unaware that life could be any different. And while I didn't know how to change, I knew I wanted to change, but I didn't feel as though I was capable of doing it. It was at that time in my life that treatment court was offered to me. The alternative to treatment court was a lengthy prison sentence, and I knew I wanted nothing more than to be a good mother to my son, and I wanted to be part of his life. I accepted treatment court, and it transformed my life and that of my sons at that time. As a person who held so much guilt and shame associated with my actions and the impact that my actions had on my family, being in a courtroom where there was a judge, there were team members and other participants that clapped, shook my hand, that genuinely asked about and inquired about my life, that helped push me towards my goals, it was a completely new and foreign feeling for me. But it was absolutely one that I came to appreciate. When we think about supporting recovery within our communities and supporting community members impacted by substance use disorder, we see that treatment courts play a vital role in so many ways. Treatment courts help support the development of a personal sense of being, as you're hearing through my story and the story of others that have been shared today. Treatment court plays an essential role in strengthening families and social relationships, and also creating opportunities for community members to be a service to their community. As we've heard today throughout the presentation, treatment courts are alternatives to incarceration, but I'll also say they are so much more. It's not just about keeping an individual at a jail or prison. It's about helping that individual, that family member, that son or daughter really strive to reach their fullest potential. And that's what treatment courts did for me. We've also heard today about how that's done: best practices, evidence-based treatment, training, multidisciplinary teams, and strength-based models. But it also is done by including the voice of treatment court graduates. I cannot emphasize this enough. Peers are valuable to the recovery process and the development of programs. As we think about innovation and the future of treatment courts across the state, let's consider how we can be responsive by including the voice of participants into the development and advancement of our programs. As we've also heard during today's summit, we are still in the midst of an opioid crisis. Our recent statistics for 2020 show that overdose deaths have increased across our state and across our nation compared to 2019. We all recognize that we are not out of the woods. So this is an opportunity for us to think outside of the box, to really advance our work, to ensure holistic approaches into our efforts, and to listen to the voices of experience to gain knowledge to support this population that we serve. But more than listen, we need to include. If we want to know what will help participants, we need to ask participants. My husband currently sits on the board of directors for a local federally qualified health center, and he's a treatment court graduate. So some may ask why. Why does he sit on the board of directors? Because that health facility knew if they wanted to have informed practices to support community members with substance use disorder, having a person in recovery take part in that decision-making process is key. As Judge Mitchell recently shared, I've been appointed as the first treatment court graduate in our nation to be elected to the board of directors for the National Association of Drug Court Professionals. Why? Because NADCP sees the value in having a former participant take part in this level of decision-making. So think about your service, your organization, or even your treatment court and ask yourself, where is participant voice being included? And treatment courts are most successful when we're fully collaborating with partners across our community. So do you run a peer recovery center, maybe a recovery group, a faith-based service, a treatment program, or maybe you're involved in workforce and education? If you are, connect with your local treatment court. Find out where they're located. We can help you with that. Also, did you know, as Judge Mitchell just shared, that in-person treatment court sessions are open to the public? I really encourage you, go to a treatment court session, share about the service that you provide, connect with the case manager. It's important that we recognize Maine Recovery is strong because we are connected and we're working together in these response efforts. So I'll leave you with this. Again, treatment courts are more than just an alternative. They unite public health and public safety. They meet accountability with compassion, and they ensure evidence-based treatment and recovery solutions instead of incarceration. They transform courtrooms into places of hope and healing, and they uphold the value of every person. I'd like to thank you for allowing me to share today. I know we have a little bit of time, so I'll hand it back over to Judge Mitchell to introduce our other presenters for today.
Ms. Simone, do you have anything to add on behalf of the case management that Maine pretrial provides?
Well, first of all, I'm very grateful to be here, and it is always edifying and gratifying to hear you and Abby speak about this. I had prepared comments, but in the interest of time, I would like to just skip to some gratitude that I have. First of all, I would like to thank the Office of Behavioral Health, because without them, we would not be providing case management in Maine. We've provided case management for over 20 years now, and right now we have our highest level of support. We're able to employ 21 people around the state of Maine to assist the drug court movement. I think equally important, I would like to share my gratitude to Maine's statewide peer coalition, to the Maine Prisoner Reentry Network, to Young People in Recovery, and countless other individuals, including our drug court graduates, and even those that we have lost. They have provided peer supports, they have provided recovery coaching, they have provided lived experience. As case managers in drug court, I want to pledge that we will continue to learn and evolve as the field does, and we will continue to use our resources to support long-term recovery for Mainers and their families. And it's one person at a time, and it's one connection at a time. I hearken to Dr. Murthy's comments this morning and your catchwords. For me, in case management, we have had to always uphold and embrace support, compassion, and accountability. And I hope that that makes a difference. Thank you very much.
Amy, are you still with us, Ms. Curtis?
I am, Your Honor. Thank you. I just take a few moments to talk about the treatment portion of the court. And give a brief rundown of what treatment looks like for those that are participating. From the time a referral is received, treatment is involved in the information gathering process. The screening process at this time begins with case management screening. Oftentimes it's done in conjunction with a treatment provider, and many times this is done while the person is still incarcerated. At this time, if a person is deemed high risk and high needs, and by high risk and high needs, we look at those people that without this level of intervention, the risk to recidivate, the risk to relapse remains high. So they have to meet a standard of the high risk, high needs. Once they meet that, they are then referred to treatment for a full, thorough biopsychosocial. Typically, this can take up to 3 hours of sitting with a person, discussing treatment options, getting a history for somebody, getting records, really collaborating with the community, other providers, and the client, and then making an individual treatment plan for that person. While many of our participants, their treatment looks similar, they are really, truly individual. Treatment options for people include residential, both long-term and short-term, IOPs, and then outpatient treatments. One thing about the court that's a little different than other programs is that clients also must complete an evidence-based criminal thinking program, where when you put this all together, the entire goal of treatment is to stabilize both mental health and substance use disorder symptoms and reduce the risk of recidivism, and to restore the person fully to a fully functioning member of society. And it is an honor and a privilege to be a part of these courts. Thank you, Your Honor.
Ms. Curtis, thank you. I think we have a few minutes left for questions, if there are any. I don't know how we field those. If Richard's available to pass those along, or?
Yes, Your Honor. Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, great. A couple of questions that have come in are, what charges are disqualifying?
The policy and procedure manual lists several different types of case types that are disqualifying charges. Murder's one, the sex crimes, whether you're charged with or been previously convicted of a sex offense, automatically excludes you from participation. And then there's a category of cases like aggravated assault and some other violent crimes against persons that aren't excludable offenses, but are entitled to what they call heightened scrutiny. It just means the court's going to take a little bit of a closer look at whether the person is appropriate for the program given the level of misconduct for which they've been alleged. So,
All right. And the next question is, why is there no court first in all counties and then particularly in Aroostook County? Why is there no drug court?
Is that directed to me?
It's directed to anyone on the team that can answer it, sir.
The legislature has funded the courts that are now in existence, and the judicial branch is always looking to expand those programs into different counties. It's not just a matter of the judicial branch saying, oh, we're going to commence an adult drug treatment court or another treatment court in a particular county. The district attorney's office in some counties is adverse to those types of programs for a number of reasons, not the least of which is that they require a huge commitment of time. Despite the caseload, the number of cases, our programs hold 25 participants per caseworker. So if there's one caseworker, the limit is 25 clients. And even though that's a small number compared to what most district attorneys would handle for a caseload, it requires an exorbitant amount of time for them to devote to those 25 folks because there's so much follow-up and interaction with the team members on really a daily basis, particularly the case manager in treatment who are dealing with these folks in the field on a daily basis and passing information along to the attorneys and to the court and other members of the team. It takes a lot of time. It also costs a lot of money. And even though there's a cost savings, you still have to front some funds initially. And that's why there's not a veteran court in each location, that we're just going to create a veteran track in the existing treatment courts that are able to do that. And because it was more cost effective for that to occur.
And also, Your Honor, there is an administrative order on how to establish a new treatment court that's available on the judicial branch's website. And there's also an application that goes along with that. And so any county that is interested in starting a treatment court would need to go through that application and administrative order process. The next question we have is there a statewide waiting list? And if so, how does someone get on it and how do they get off of it? And I think perhaps Ms. Simone might be able to address that the best.
Sure, Mr. Gordon. There is technically not a statewide waiting list. We wanted to share the PowerPoint today so that you could have a referral form that can be used by an individual seeking recovery or currently locked up, an attorney, a family member, a treatment provider. Anyone can refer to Maine's drug courts. It is critical that they obtain legal representation to go through the process. So that's important. But our case managers are willing and able to take those referrals statewide. We frown on a waiting list because we have additional funding and enhancements currently that we've never had before. We want people to access these courts whenever they can. So the short answer is reach out to us. We will provide our contact information to you. In terms of how one gets off a waiting list, hopefully it's because one entered a treatment court. Obviously, there's traditional case processing, and the case could be disposed of in a different way or a different alternative. But we hope that you join us in our court programs because we need you. You're part of the solution to getting better in Maine.
Okay, Ms. Simone, thank you. I think that's the time that's been allotted for us to present. We wish we had more time, and as I mentioned, there's a lot of information to share. We've tried to touch upon the most important aspects of our program and the successes that we've shared really as a result of it. So thank you for joining us, and enjoy the balance of the presentation.
Good day. My name is Ray D, and I have substance use disorder, opiate use disorder, and I am a man in long-term recovery. And what that looks like to me today is that I don't have to, I get to put my pants on one leg at a time, stand on my own 2 feet, look the world in the eye, and stand free. And that was not always the case. My story starts pretty much like anyone else's would in the stories that you're going to hear today. The only thing that might be different would be the names, the faces, and the places. My family life, well, parents were both service sector, hardworking people who prized education above all else because they kept emphasizing it's the one thing that can never be taken away from you. So that's what I went for. Along the way, I had to work in restaurants, kitchens, pay for school, working nights, weekends, holidays, double shifts, you name it, and I ground it out. That's when opiates were introduced to my story. It not only took away physical pain, it also took away that background static of perpetual discontent that I didn't quite know how to define. I went on to succeed. I became a medical physicist. I became a certified radiation therapist. I treated cancer patients with radiation and radioactive materials, and I even achieved the rank of physics professor. The only reason any of that is important, the only reason at all, is to show you that OUD and SUD will drag a human being down in as many different ways as there are human beings dragged down by it. At the pinnacle of my career, I had a positive urine screen, and that ended it. My cover had been blown. I was stripped of my titles and of my duties. My spiral began. And again, my descent into hell and the hell I lived in isn't going to sound much different than the stories that you're going to be hearing today. When I was at my bottom, what I considered the unthinkable at the time happened, and I died. And when I woke up in the hospital, I wasn't very happy first. But they had used CPR and Narcan to bring me back to life. Turns out the hospital's not allowed to let you die. Then I saw something that I never saw before, and those were outstretched hands that were connected to boots on the ground, that were connected to resources, that were connected to facilities, where there was a community standing ready and waiting to help me. And help me they did. That was close to 7 years ago, and I haven't looked back. One of the greatest gifts of it all today is that I don't have to, I get to be a peer recovery coach. I get to go into the Aroostook County Jail and talk to the inmates here about their use, about their situation in jail, whether it's possession, use, distribution, and help them sort their lives out and give some of what was given to me so freely onto them. And I find that that is a life so much more satisfying and so much more rewarding than I could have ever imagined. So I thank you very much for taking the time today to hear out these stories. And again, I hope you have a blessed day. Thank you.
Our three panelists will explore the critical role that treatment, recovery support, community connection, and lived experience play in successful reentry from prison and jail. And we're so pleased to have Keith Arvanitis and Sean Crothers and our lead presenter, who is from Massachusetts, but is no stranger to the behavioral health community here in Maine. Peter J. Katouzian is the sheriff of Middlesex County, as well as the president of the Massachusetts Sheriff's Association and president of the Major Sheriffs of America, a national organization representing over 100 sheriffs and 120 million Americans. Sheriff Katouzian has transformed corrections in his community through the innovative use of targeted programming for specific populations. The oldest of these specialized programs is the Medication-Assisted Treatment and Directed Opioid Recovery Program, or MATADOR. The revolution and evolution of this program and how it has been replicated in other states is what Sheriff Katouzian is here to discuss today. Sheriff Katouzian has presented on these issues to the Maine Sheriff's Association, the New England Pretrial Justice Reform Summit, the New England Association of Drug Court Professionals, and to the Opioid Collaborative Program sponsored by the Maine Attorney General's Office and Maine U.S. Attorney's Office. We are so fortunate to have him here virtually with us today. Welcome, Sheriff Katouzian.
Thank you very much, Bruce, and thank you for inviting me. It's great to join with my friends from Maine once again. As you mentioned, I've been up there a number of times. We've collaborated a number of times, and I really enjoy that collaboration. And I learn as much from you as I hope that you can learn from me too. So thank you very much. I also want to throw a shout out to my colleagues, Sheriff Joyce and Sheriff Merry, who I have visited up there as well, and I care a lot about this issue. And a special hello for Chief Tim Sheehan, formerly of Tewksbury, Massachusetts, that's now up in South Portland. For those of you that you don't know Chief Sheehan, he is an incredible leader on the issues of mental health and substance use disorder, and will really benefit not just South Portland, but the entire state of Maine. So look for his leadership. I'm going to begin my presentation now. And by stating, in Maine doesn't need this as much as other communities. But when I speak about this nationally, I'd say coming to a theater near you. Actually, it's in your theater. This is coming to a jail near you. This is opioid use disorder. It is about medication-assisted treatment for substance use disorder. And as it was said by our previous speaker, it's about communities. So let's understand that the communities are an important part of the part of the critical answer to this. Here I've put together a few headlines. We never used to speak about medication-assisted treatment. People didn't know what it was. But here you can see headlines from around the country, from Maine, New York, Philadelphia, Ohio. Even down that one on the bottom, you can see in Ohio and many other jurisdictions, you can now see the ACLU advertising for those that are becoming incarcerated, that are being denied opioid treatment. So this is now becoming not just a public political strategy, but a litigation strategy as well. So these headlines can tell you exactly where we are headed. Let me just tell you a little bit about myself, just so you can understand my perspective. I was in the legislature for 14 years. I was the chairman of the Committee on Healthcare for a number of those years, and that's where I learned a lot about the issue of substance use disorder. In fact, in 2005, I created the opioid, the OxyContin Prescription Drug Abuse Commission, and worked with that with a number of luminaries from around the state. That actually, one of them, Michael Botticelli, became the director of the Office of National Drug Control Policy later. And so we actually worked on this together back in 2005. Sadly, what I will say is if you could take a look at the charts I will show you later, in 2005, we had about 550 opioid-related deaths. In 2019, we had over 2,000 opioid-related deaths. Quite honestly, what we knew then, we know now, and we never really did enough about it. We never stepped it up. And that's a real tragedy because we've lost so many of our colleagues and people of our community. Just a quick one. It's not just opioids. Center on Addiction listing these are commonly used illegal drugs. You can see from cannabinoids, opioids, stimulants, club drugs, dissociatives, hallucinogens, others. I know that in Maine, you've been allowing medical marijuana, and now it's moving into the recreational. And let us not forget about the issue of alcohol too. And let us also not forget that there is a medication-assisted treatment for alcoholism, and that is, of course, produced by Alkermes. It's Vivitrol. So let's not forget that we have MAT even for alcohol. It's not only on opioids. Brain science has come a long way. I think this is really important to say. Oftentimes, everyone on this call knows that we used to think about it as there was a stigma about it. We used to think about addiction as a weakness of will, or someone that doesn't care or chooses not to make good choices. Science has shown us that 1 in 7 people will become addicted. And very importantly, even that last point, which I think is crucially important, we know that the initial decision to use drugs is voluntary, but drug addiction is a disease of the brain. And as long as we understand that, we can address it appropriately. There are a number of clinical trials ongoing for substance use disorders, even for methamphetamine, cocaine, and tobacco. People should understand around the rest of the country, they're speaking about opioids, but they're frustrated about the national discussion about opioids because their primary problem is methamphetamine. And they would always say, as I would say, coming to a theater near you, they'd say, coming to a theater near you, methamphetamine. And of course, it's probably you are seeing it up there. We are seeing more meth problems here. The problem in my backyard, we were, when I started on this job just 10 years ago, we had about almost 1,400 individuals in our care. That dropped down to 800 more recently. Because of COVID, it actually dropped down to even further to 550, even a little bit lower. We're now picking up again. By the way, interestingly, for many, it was a very jurisprudential, address in advocacy. For me, it allowed me to create the distancing I needed in my facility and to empty the dorm spaces and put them in individualized cells to create that spacing necessary to treat COVID. Also, that reduction in population allows me to do more and better programming, not just housing people. About 40% require medical detox when they come in. 76 to 78% usually have a co-occurring mental illness along with their substance use disorder. Generally, our uninsured rate is 25% compared to the 2% average because we have been an expansion state. I know that Maine finally did that. Congratulations. When I last spoke to you folks, you were not there, and quite honestly, I could see the frustration in your eyes, and I felt that same frustration because without Medicaid expansion, it's really difficult to tackle this problem. And then, of course, the fact that those that become released from places of incarceration are 120 times more likely to die as a result of an overdose. So let me just tell you a little bit about the new arrivals. You can see here almost 2/3 are from opioid polysubstance. 20% are for opioids and about 12% for alcohol. That's the makeup. Here you can see the tracking of our overdoses. Middlesex County is 1.6 million people. It's barely, slightly larger than the state of Maine, but you can see our numbers are tracking almost identically as you see the growth and the ebb and the flow. These numbers did peak in 2016. They started coming down in 2017. They've stabilized and come up slightly a little bit more again from 17 to 18 and 19. But the fact is, many people started declaring victory in 2017, and most of us in the field knew that that was a mistake to do. You can see the overdose death rate actually coming down slightly. Again, we've got a lot of work to do here in Massachusetts. And here in your backyard, you can see that those numbers are basically tracking, those lines almost track the way that the numbers were in Massachusetts. So again, across different states, different socioeconomics, same type of problem, same type of growth. We're starting to see a little progress, but it's not enough and it's not quickly enough, and we have to sustain it. What's really important about some of these quotes are from Dr. Volkow of NIDA and Dr. Grinspoon of Harvard Medical School. They both speak about right now we're facing a complex public health crisis in COVID, which is laid on top of a complex public health crisis in opioid addiction. And that is just making things much more difficult. So what's really important about this slide is, yeah, we're becoming consumed by COVID. The fact is we need to focus and we need to maintain focus on opioids. And I really applaud you for stepping into this space when people seem to have forgotten that we have another problem on our hands. You in Maine are stepping up for that. COVID implications for those considering MAT. Access to medications is being directly impacted. Some of the DEA regulations that have limited access to methadone are being reconsidered. I think that's a good thing because it is so tightly structured that sometimes you can't allow treatment appropriately, and that hindrance can lead to relapse. And then applying community standards in a correctional facility is something that we have struggled with as well. And it's just changing the way we're doing medicine overall. The MAT program, this is the intersection of public safety and public health. This is where I brought from my former prosecutorial career into my public health days in the legislature, now bringing them into the sheriff's office. And you can see here the providing of the benefits of this are reentry options. It lowers recidivism. I'll show you some slides on that. It lowers overdoses as they're leaving, expands the network of community-based providers, which is crucial into everything that you need to, and your community partners are most important, some of the most important connections you have for this treatment, and it creates innovation and encourages program sustainability. So this is my staff sort of aggrandizing a little bit what we've done. So I hope you don't think that I think that we have led the way, but we have learned. We've also made a number of mistakes that I will also share with you. Matador 1.0. We called this, my staff called this the amateur. We failed. I first became sheriff, wanted to start a program. We did it with Vivitrol, naltrexone injectionable injections of Vivitrol. I called it abject failure. It was. Lack communication with community care providers. We didn't have the proper staff in there, and we didn't collect any data. When I first came on, this is the staff that I had. I began to use it, and it just wasn't working very well at all. And through a lot of trial and error, we saw that in that, by the way, version, we didn't have navigators and we didn't have a warm handoff. You can see here, the providers that were participating with us then were very limited in number. And even then, I had to fight around all the communities to get them to sign up and join in and participate, because even then, they didn't know that Vivitrol was different from methadone or Suboxone or agonists, and were very reticent to join in. Again, this is only 9 years ago. A different world now. The second version, the Pro, as my staff calls it, we got it a lot better. Actually, it worked really well. We started one of the first jails to do MAT. We established it over 4 years, and we started using navigators, and we started collecting robust numbers of data through this as well. And then we're used as a national model by a few different organizations. You can see in the next slide that you can see just how many community health providers and support programs we now had and partners around, which is why it also became much more successful. So please understand, everyone needs to step up from the community as well. The navigator, the warm handoff, you can see if you can get if you can get someone to that second shot, from the first shot inside to the second shot on the outside, 2/3 went. But you can see that if you can get them into the third shot and the fourth shot, you have much higher compliance with their medical regimen, so to speak, in getting those shots. So if you can get them past that first 1 or 2 shots, you have a significant chance of holding them in the program for a longer period of time. The next slide, you can see basically we did propensity matching. We couldn't use randomized control trial because we can't randomize assignment of medication-assisted treatment. But we did this to create an apples-to-apples comparison. You can see the numbers on the left before matching, the numbers on the right when we were able to then create apples-to-apples matching. And so then in the next slide, you can see basically that this is a statistically significant model. 1 year post-release recidivism rate of just under 11% compared to 25% for the comparison group. And that was a almost 50% reduction in recidivism. These are statistically significant numbers by science, right? We're actually in the process of having this published through a university locally because they've actually validated the science already. But very importantly, the overdose is being reduced. Less than 5% over 5 years of people going out have succumbed to a fatal overdose. We check these with our medical examiner, and as our studies have shown in Massachusetts, these individuals are 120 times more likely to die as a result of an overdose, and you all know those stories as well. Then we began Matador 3.0, which is now using all 3 forms of medication-assisted treatment in our facility. It's a 3-year pilot, so we're offering methadone, Suboxone, and Vivitrol as well, along with a robust data collection policy. We actually went to the legislature to try to advocate for this. And so we were successful and received some funding through grants, and we're hoping that will be sustained as well. It allows for the maintenance of any individual with a verified MAT prescription based upon the recommendation of a qualified addiction specialist. It provides an induction 30 days prior to release for sentenced, and then we sign them up for Medicaid, and there was a significant amount of data that we were going to collect. We're going to, I'm going to wrap up very quickly here. You can see here, this is some of our information, the demographics that we've created on age and race. You can see some of the crime offenses in there as well. Next slide, you can see the breakdown of the pretrial versus the sentenced that are participating in the program. And you can see those that used MAT previously in the community, and then the induction and maintenance on the bottom left as well. You can see our total doses as we began the program hitting almost 2,700 per month. We've now, after COVID, we've stabilized to about 2,200 or slightly more. That's actually been picking up recently. So July will be higher, and I'm assuming August will also be higher. What's really important is that very second slide, the very last one. You can see that almost 23% of the people we were inducing one day prior to release. And so that's the importance of the community connections. Those community organizations are going to participate, because if we didn't have those partnerships, that one day putting them out into the field, they would simply drift. They would have no support systems. And so for all the providers out there and the partners, that's where you come in, because some people are going to get induced one day before. One of some of the lessons we've learned, I mean, I'm going to skip by the lessons we've learned and just say this. Vision without data is just a hallucination. This is something I've said around the country a lot. I believe we're going to do something. We need to collect that data so that we can then report out that data, and we can correct pathways as we have done here in Middlesex, and then it can be replicated appropriately across the country. Next slide is just what you can see, some of the positive headlines that have come out from a couple from Maine in there. And even the last one, you've got a new Mainer from Massachusetts, from my hometown of Waltham, Mass, Mark Gallagher, who used to work for Senator Markey down here. And we worked together with Mark Gallagher to do some significant opioid programming for the country. And Senator Markey came here. So another great addition from Maine is Mark Gallagher. I'll leave it at that and be ready for any questions after our next presenter. So thank you very much, and thank you for your interest.
Thank you very much, Sheriff Katusian. Some folks asked, one person asked if we can have access to these slides later, so that we, you did an amazing job of whipping through a whole lot of really great information. So we will make this available later, and I'm pretty sure this is all being recorded and will be available for a certain period of time. And we'll get to the rest of the questions after our other two panelists. I want to introduce Keith Arvanitis. He's in long-term recovery, formerly incarcerated in Florida and Maine. Serves as regional director with Amistad in the Mid-Coast, including the Harbor Peer and Wellness Center in Boothbay and the Peer Learning Community in Bath. Keith is a Maine certified intentional peer support specialist and recovery coach. After spending over 25 years battling addiction and over 10 in and out of county and state correctional institutions, drug rehabilitation, and mental health programs, Keith has dedicated himself to serving others, providing invaluable support to those leaving prison and seeking to make a change in their lives, reintegrating back into their communities. Keith Arvanitis.
Thank you, Bruce. Everybody. My name is Keith Arvanitis. I'll be really quick as where we are on a time limit. But I've experienced incarceration in Florida, Maine, and my experience in Florida was, for me at least, there was very little community support. When I was released with a $100 bill and a bus ticket, and just very, very few given to me. For me at that point in my life, it didn't work out. I ended up relapsing within weeks of my release. I ended up in a sober house. And it was a very unhealthy living environment at that time, sober living house, where I ended up residing up to Maine. I made a big move, demographic change. But as we all know, the demographic changes. I ended up in a very similar situation as I was in Florida, incarcerated here in Maine. All of this due as a byproduct of my addiction. and really not seeking treatment. I wasn't ready at that point in my life. Shares when I came into the Maine Department of Corrections, there was a group of men inside that were offering peer support, and peer support was something that was very new to me. I'd never heard it, but it was something that I definitely wanted to get hold of, and try to work the program that was being offered inside of the institutions. It's something that I did. I was released with insurmountable obstacles with re-entering into the community. But the big thing up here in I found was the community I was released to was, and there was a lot of programs that were supportive of my release. And as well as myself, I was ready to make that change, and I was ready to walk that in recovery. I had done as I had connected with Maine, and through that, able to the University of Maine Augusta, which was really my huge, which was my recovery community at that time, and put me on the journey to where I'm at now. Through that, I also, by going to school, it also opened the road to employment through my employer with Amistad, and gave me an opportunity through the Certified Intentional Peer Support Program, which is offered by the Office of Behavioral Health here in Maine. That opened many doors for me, as well as and through this experience and my experiences, I'm now able in a situation where I'm able to help others, and I'm able to serve others with navigating the system on entry, and especially with the collaboration that I have with the Maine Prisoner Reentry Network and being part of that. One thing I would like to add is the work that we do. We actually have recovery centers, one in Bath and one in Boothbay Harbor. And about it, utilize these centers as a safe place, because for me that was huge. Was being part of the community. I was fear-based and fearful and about my community and what they would. And that's something that we like to do here, is to non-judgmental, and really give individuals an opportunity. And through my experiences and others' experiences that we have here at the center, we're able to offer that support. Thank you, Bruce.
Thanks, Keith. Our next presenter, Sean Crothers, grew up in Falmouth, and after graduating from the University of Southern Maine, had a 25-year career in sales of medical devices locally. Recovery changed Sean's life, and after a brief incarceration, he dedicated his life to mentoring formerly incarcerated men. In 2019, Sean helped Rob Korobkin start Courage House, the former Sigma Nu fraternity house at USM, and now a 20-bed MAT-friendly recovery residence in the heart of Gorham, Maine. Sean attended his first MPRN community meeting less than a week after his release from county jail in March of 2018. And now Sean serves as the director of our board. He's the chair of our board of directors for the Maine Prisoner Reentry Network. Sean Crothers.
Thank you, Bruce, and thank you, Keith, and thank you, Peter. And thank you, Governor and Gordon. It's a great venue. What Bruce said is right. Recovery changed my life. I was a normal, successful guy in our society, but the little secret was that I was an alcoholic. And when I was able to become abstinent through a 12-step program, my life was forever changed. Unfortunately, I was in trouble, and unfortunately, the justice takes place very slowly in our society, and I had 2.5 years to get sober and be in recovery before I had to face the facts of my crime and that I was in trouble with the state of Maine. During that time, I jumped into recovery and tried to help other people. And when I eventually served my time in jail, I realized how many other people were here due to substances. So my reentry was easy. I still had a home and a life, and I had support mechanisms, and I was fully into recovery after 2.5 years of being part of a 12-step program. But the people around me did not have that. So through MPRN and now through Courage House, and I want to put a shout out to Rob Karakin, the founder of Courage House, for putting up the finances to do it. But when Rob brought me over to the old Sigma Nu fraternity house, where I had gone to school and did bad things, I knew that we could change something. And we opened up 16 beds. And we focused on letting guys come to it that were getting out on Suboxone. And what I knew about the MAT program coming out of jail and prison was that guys weren't very successful due to unstable living situations. So we've been able to provide that for guys and provide the support they need and the treatment support. And frankly, just a script for MAT or Suboxone or whatever the substance, we work mostly with Suboxone, but we've had methadone in-house, is not enough. And we need to help guys learn about recovery. And recovery is not taught on the inside, frankly. And the goal of Courage House is to help guys find their way in society through recovery. And that means getting a job and learning how to navigate their own medical situation. And we're blessed to do that. And so I'm going to open this up to questions, but we're available at www.couragehouse.me. And thank you for the opportunity to present.
Thank you so much, Sean. Keith, I'm sorry you were kind of broken up there, but the thing that I recognized when I first met Keith was his sense of community, and I really appreciate that. That's what Sheriff Katusian brought to the table, is that kind of that difference between success and failure was the expansion of more community collaboration, and that map is really impressive, and I appreciate you bringing that to us, Sheriff. I'm curious as to because you're offering the 3 different types of MAT. Here in Maine, the landscape is more Suboxone almost exclusively. There's a little bit of Vivitrol that has been offered, and I haven't even had any of our over a couple hundred clients in the last year or two be on methadone. So I'm hoping you can kind of elaborate on the mix there, and maybe anecdotally or maybe even through real data what the differences are between those two and how important it is to have the option.
So thank you, Bruce. Well said. And by the way, Keith and Sean, that's the connection to the community. Again, our program had much better success because we had a navigator and then we had our community partners. So there's that bridge into the community, and that can be if you're just being treated in the community, right? I mean, heck, I need a navigator just to run through my life, and I don't have a substance use disorder that I know of, right? So the fact is, we all need some help in life, and some people, because of things that are laid on top of them, need that support. And if they don't get that support, it's just going to run them into trouble. So yes, that second version that I spoke about with the statistically significant information showing a reduction in recidivism, by 50%, and a number of other things, and overdose death, was a program that we did with only naltrexone, the injectable form of naltrexone, otherwise known as Vivitrol. And yes, and now we have grown from that program of using the antagonist into the agonist. As usually is the case, especially if people are coming in and maintaining a prescription, if they're on naltrexone, generally they haven't been having as many problems, and so they're not maintaining a naltrexone prescription coming in. And we know that a significant portion of those that are coming in that are on an agonist therapy, methadone or Suboxone, are also testing positive for other drugs. And that is what's getting them into further criminal behavior, right? They're in there because of a drug addiction and they're committing crimes because of a drug addiction. So now a lot of the maintenance is the agonist, and we're struggling trying to find a place for naltrexone in there. There is a place for methadone. There is a place for Suboxone. There is definitely also a place for naltrexone, or really for the injectable form, Vivitrol. And we just can't lose focus on that. And some of that's prejudice, biases by clinicians and others or industries that don't see the value. I say, I don't care what your MAT is. I just want to meet you where you're at. And we've got to find the right form of MAT for the right individual at the right time in their life. In that way, when we do that, we can find, we can have real efficacy to our MAT programs. But there is a place for agonists, and there is a place for antagonist therapies in not only a correctional facility, but in the community as well.
Yeah. So Sean, I'm hoping you can address some of the issues that we've come up with in meeting with men who are leaving the prison system, who have been abstinent for that period of time, and then are really scared, and the only option they feel like they have is to go on Suboxone before release, because they're really afraid of relapse or potential relapse when they get out, and how beneficial another option, that option of Vivitrol, would be to them. And most of them don't even know that it's even out there. They've never heard of it before.
I think the issue that you're referring to, Bruce, is how we take an addict who may have lost that addiction over a time in prison, and then we put them back on an opiate with a blocker, i.e. Suboxone. And that can be difficult if they're not stabilized. So the first men I worked with, when I picked them up at the prison, we took them straight to the clinic and they were given their first dose of Suboxone, and that was back in 2018. Now, of course, they've started getting their medication up to 6 months prior to release. So they're very stabilized and started a process. And I think there's a big difference between the two, because we know that when you start out on the opioid, you're jumping back into a substance that has side effects. And the availability of naloxone as a Vivitrol as an option would be inviting to many of the guys, because there's definitely a fear of going back on substance. What I will say is that I sleep at night knowing guys are on Suboxone and not, because I think it's a lifesaver. I believe in the harm reduction aspect of the combination of buprenorphine and naloxone making Suboxone. So I hope we can there's a place for a different substance, but right now we're falling under the gold standard, and Vivitrol would make sense.
Bruce, if I could just say one last thing too, because I know our time is running up. It's something important, even when we're discussing it today, called medication-assisted treatment, right? You have to have the treatment, and then the medication assists the treatment. And we get so comfortable speaking about medication like that's the answer. It can be part of the answer, but if we don't do the treatment and then overlay the medication on top of that to assist the treatment, then we're missing it. We're just thinking that a drug will be the answer to all our problems, much like we thought a drug was going to handle all our pains and have no bad ill effects of it, right? So it's almost repeating exactly in this forum what got us into this problem in the first place, with 80% of heroin addicts starting with pills. So just medication-assisted treatment. It could be community cognitive behavioral therapies, others. It really does mean navigators and community. That's part of the treatment. Let's not forget that stuff as we look to medication to help us with that side.
I think that's a fantastic. Go ahead, Sean.
It's a fantastic way, and treatment. The medication is a tiny part of it, but the therapy that our guys get in-house is the big part of it. So thank you.
I think that's a great place to end this on. And thank you, folks, for staying on time. This is really great. And thank you again to the governor and Gordon Smith and the Office of Behavioral Health. Any of you folks that are on our stream right now can go back to stream 1 to see the next recovery story. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Molly. I am 23 years old. I currently live in Biddeford, and I entered recovery at the age of 16. I am currently 6.5 years sober, and I am an employee of the Portland Recovery Community Center. My job at Portland Recovery Community Center is that I am a recovery coach for an organization called Day One, where I work with other youths entering recovery to help shape what recovery looks like for them as somebody who graduated from that program at 17. My story of use involves being really lonely and starting to use drugs and alcohol and other substances at the age of 12. And it had slowly but quickly escalated so that by the time I was 16, I was using in an unrecognizable way, and I was introduced to opioids. The introduction of opioids was one of the first times that I thought I felt happy in my life. My use continued and it got out of hand. I was scraping by in high school, I was scraping by in relationships, but then I was presented with a turning point in my life where I had been through a lot of experiences that adults don't go through, let alone 16-year-olds. And I had to truly ask myself, did I want to keep escalating and living on this path of using and lying and stealing and being the person that I'm not intended to be? Or did I want to overhaul my life and pave my own road? So at the age of 16, on my own free will, with no obligation to any court system or school or even my family, I decided to enter treatment. So I checked myself into a treatment center and I began my recovery journey. And for as painful and difficult as it was to be away from home at 16 and lose all of my possessions and really lose my family and really mourn the life that I was living, it's pain that I went through to be where I am today. I initially began my recovery through a 12-step program, but coming into my 6th year of recovery, I realized that that 12-step program was really a catalyst for me to enter into my faith journey with God. And today, the program that I work is purely based around the faith that I follow and the church that I'm a part of. And I really feel that the first 5.5 years of my recovery was about planting seeds and breaking down walls and peeling back layers of getting to the core of who I am. And it's scary and it's very vulnerable, but it's been this beautiful experience shaping my life. And even just the person I was 6 months ago, I don't recognize anymore, which is the absolute beautiful thing about being a person in recovery, is that you never arrive to what recovery is. You keep growing and changing with what the purpose of that season of your life and that season of your recovery is meant to be. Recovery has been such a beautiful gift in my life because at 16, I was homeless and addicted to hard substances and alcohol. And now I'm 23 and I'm 6.5 years sober, which is crazy to say. People outside of the halls sometimes just don't believe me. People in the halls absolutely understand. And one of the most beautiful gifts that recovery has given me is that it's proven to me that I'm never alone in what I do. And that no matter what pathway I follow, there's a large community there welcoming me with open arms. Thank you.
Hello and welcome to Taking Back Maine's Future. My name is AJ Ruth and I'm a 7th grade math teacher at Wyndham Middle School, part of RSU 14. And I'll be talking to you about a program that we have for our 7th graders that we think all 7th graders in the state of Maine should take part in. So here's Laura.
We're in the same room, so we're just switching screens here. My name is Laura Morris. I am the project director for the Be the Influence Coalition, which is a drug-free community coalition in the Wyndham-Raymond area. I just want to thank Molly and all the others who have been sharing their voices today. It's just so inspirational. And those of us in prevention want to stop this now so that we never have to hear those stories. But I am thrilled to showcase Taking Back Maine's Future, which started with a Back to the Future theme, and it is a project-based 7th grade curriculum. And to the 4 amazing educators who made this happen, AJ being one of them. Be the Influence got involved just to provide information and resources, speakers, and to help with their kickoff assembly. And again, Amanda and AJ, she likes to go by AJ, said that this is something all 7th graders should have. As someone who just partook in this project, when you see these 7th grade kids walk away with the understanding of what opiates are, what it does to their brain, their bodies, their futures, what they can do not to get into that situation, it's really inspiring, and they were just so stimulated and encouraged by this. I just think everybody should get their 7th graders in the program like this. So we've tried to bring recognition to it regionally, like today, and nationally. We were able to bring it to our National Community Anti-Drug Coalitions of America conference. We hope that this really sets fire. The goal of the assembly itself is to hook and engage the hundreds of 7th graders that have gone through this program for the project that they have ahead, and to expose them to a panel of experts to bring importance to their involvement. And so we were really happy that Gordon Smith was the first school assembly I think he ever spoke at was ours, and it made huge difference to these kids understanding that this is kind of a big deal, this project that they are getting involved with, and a big deal for Maine. And our goal here today is really to provide a roadmap for other districts to prevent use for every other 7th grader before 8th grade. So as Governor Mills has stated, we need to start with prevention at the roots, start young. And we want to thank you both for letting us share this today. So we'll go to our PowerPoint now. It's not there. Hold on, technical difficulties. There we go. Okay, so we're going to walk you through how you could roll out this roadmap yourself. This is part of the kickoff assembly. And so we have 7th grade all coming into the gym, the auditorium, depending on where you do it. And we just want to get them excited. So we decided to have music playing. And if you use celebrities and people that they can relate to, we can really talk about how people are taken too soon. And it doesn't matter who they are, what walk of life they come from, if they're successful, if they have money, it can happen. Addiction and overdosing can happen to anybody. And so we use Michael Jackson and then Heath Ledger as an example, because kids really relate to that. And we also tell them that they had no idea that they were in situations that would really lead to an overdose. Then we do a little trivia contest just to find out if they even know what opiates are. We talk about the faces of the epidemic in Maine, and we share some numbers. We talk about what is an opiate, an opioid. What are the ones that are most commonly used? And again, they go into detail in all of the curriculum, so we do this very quickly. Why would people start using to begin with? What are the reasons why people would use? And then how do we pull these students in to know what they're going to do with this project and how they can help? And first, they're going to educate themselves on what opiates, heroin are, how they affect your developing brains and bodies. And then they'll go into the designing projects to educate others on the harm they can cause and how to prevent using them inappropriately. Where to refer people for help, safe storage, disposal, and mainly that they're going to have fun with this project. They did make some lovely PSAs last year. We just didn't think we had time to share a lot of them, but they are on the Be the Influence website and probably on the RSU 14 website as well. And AJ is going to talk more about the newspaper articles and more about the projects themselves. So year one, we had a relative success. You can see the real DeLorean car there. I think it's 400 people showed up for the first open house where we showcased to parents and the community. And I'm going to have AJ talk more about the project itself, but you can see down below there's Gordon Smith, and we have John Serbeck, the Cumberland County District Attorney. That's Bridget Rauscher with the City of Portland, and we have our law enforcement and local fire, so that the kids really feel like this is an important effort and they can ask questions to the experts. So they're challenged with which path are we going to take with Maine? Are we going to go down the opiate crisis path where there's strewn with dirt and papers and confusion and hurt? Or are we going to go on a path that is light and cheery and happy and a healthy future? Like we were saying, it really attracted a lot of people the first year, and that's Bill Diamond, who's shaking hands with one of the students. But you can see that these kids are really engaged and really excited about the project. We did bring it nationally to the Leadership Conference. We gained national recognition with their poster contest. We shared it with Angus and Shelley and Susan. And then we challenged the kids. We say, now it's your turn to put a lid on the opiate crisis, and may the force be with you. So that is the kickoff assembly. And here's AJ. She will tell you how the curriculum works.
So the project is called Taking Back Maine's Future, and we really get the students hooked on this project by using the theme of, going back to the future and the DeLorean time machine, and using that pop culture to really get the students on board. You can see we have some sponsors. We have Maine Lab Rescue, the Windham Parent Teachers Association, and the Sebago Lakes Region Rotary. Without their help, we wouldn't have the funding to bring the real DeLorean time machine from the Back to the Future movies to Windham, Maine. So that was really important, that piece of our assembly. So I'm going to play for you. This is the video that the students see at the kickoff to really let them know what they're being charged with.
Today, the future of Maine is ours to create. Two possible paths lie before us. One, bright with promise and hope. The other, dark and dangerous, in the shadow of Maine's opioid epidemic. Opioid addiction does not discriminate against any person, rich, poor, male, female, young or old. We are all at risk. Today, we begin a journey down both paths to see what Maine may look like in its two possible futures. The bright future of a state that has defeated the opioid epidemic, or the stark reality of what the future of Maine will be if the current opioid crisis continues. Your job is to travel through time via research and evaluation of current data and statistics, and bring newspapers back from the future. some from the bright, promising future where Maine has defeated the epidemic, others from the dark and dangerous one. What we do today and in the coming years to solve the opioid crisis, to help addicts, to find new solutions legally, socially, and personally, will determine Maine's future.
Dr. Brown, I'd love to go back to the future. Now it's a race.
Of course it's a race.
But what does that mean?
It means your future hasn't been written yet. No one's has. Your future is whatever you make it. So make it a good one. Both of you. We will, Doc. Stand back. All right, boys, buckle up. Hey, Doc. Where you going now? Back to the future? Nope. Already been there.
There we go. So that was the video at the end of our kickoff with our panel. As Laura said, the panel includes law enforcement, district attorney, persons in recovery, counselors, fire department. So they listen to those speakers, they learn about opiates for the beginning stage, and then they see that video to kind of learn what they're doing. So Doug Elder, Gwen Roberts, and the late Lee Leroy and I developed this curriculum in 2018. And in 2019, we wanted to make sure that it was more evidence-based. So we gave a pre and post survey to track knowledge. And we saw from the survey results that students didn't understand what an opioid was before. They didn't realize what was happening in our state. And at the end of the project, they had gained so much knowledge. And we said, so now your task is to go out into our community. When you go to high school, you're like an ambassador with all this knowledge to share with your friends and to spread the word and to make right choices. So students analyze data and they create projects in all of their classes during the learning phase of this. In science, they're learning about the brain and neurons. In language arts, they're reviewing newspapers and learning what's happening in our state and how to write a newspaper article. In math, they're analyzing graphs and statistics data from our state. Social studies, they're looking at the state and how the geography impacts the economy and then how our state compares to other states. And then we have our big culminating event once they've learned about the opioid epidemic and they've written their newspapers, which features the Back to the Future theme, the real DeLorean time machine from Massachusetts from a collector with mannequins from the film on display. And last year we had well over 400 people. I would say the first year was over 400. Last year probably was over 500 people with media coverage. So the implementation, as I said, that starts with the kickoff, then several weeks, I would say about 3 to 4 weeks of learning through all of the classes, math, language arts, science, and social studies. And then students in teams of 2 create newspaper front pages, and they learn a lot about how to manipulate with Google Slides, how to create their front page. So there's that whole piece of graphic design in there as well, because they're bringing this newspaper back from 2055. We have the bright future where the current opioid epidemic has been conquered, or the dark and dangerous future where the crisis has steadily worsened. So we have some guiding questions here for the students. Is the rising tide of Maine's drug epidemic drowning our state? How can we use positive choices to overcome obstacles? And then understanding what drives people to alter their state of reality. to begin with. And to hook them all in at the kickoff, we talk about how this could happen to anyone. And we have had guest speakers that are unlikely addicts who are now in recovery, and just understanding that it could happen to anyone. The time frame is about 6 weeks, starting with our kickoff assembly, going through the learning phase, and then actually writing those newspaper articles. In health class, we had 8th graders creating public service announcements that they then came and shared with the 7th graders to help them learn more about the opioid epidemic. And then at our big culminating event, then those PSAs were also on display along with our newspapers. So this goes into more of the specifics of how you would implement this. And the curriculum connections here. In math, we look at drug abuse and the statistics for Maine. They create graphs as well as analyzing them. In language arts, they read The Seventh Wish by Kate Messner as an anchor book, and it follows a teenager through her struggles with addiction. And the students research that, write a companion book. They also read a lot of newspaper articles just from our own paper to find out what's happening in our state today. In health, they're learning about opioids and how they affect the body. In science, it's really a focus on brain science, the rewiring and how opioids hijack the brain. So they understand neurons and how the brain develops, especially the adolescent brain. Social studies, they're looking at economic impact, the impact on Maine's families. And then we have the guiding principles and guidance support, and looking at students' habits of work. So you can see some I can statements here for our standards, just showing that really this spans all of the subjects. A lot of I can statements for language arts. And then this is our product descriptor, where if you look in the yellow and the pink boxes, so students in their teams, they're going to write 2 headline articles. So we go through a lot of different newspaper articles and talk about what is a human interest piece? What's an interview look like? What if we wrote about drug deaths or criminal activity or the economic impact, the environmental impact, government and state spending? You know, there's so many different choices. So each student and their partner pick a different topic to write their newspaper article. And then each student also has a secondary component. Those things are like, maybe it's a poem, a piece of art, a featured obituary, the cop shop, coupons, real estate, an advice column, a movie review, a graph, a game like a crossword. So every newspaper front page has 2 articles and 2 secondary components divided up by those 2 students for display. And then this is a PSA project descriptor that our health teacher used for creating those PSAs with the health students, and a rubric that she used as well. So here are some pictures from our kickoff. You can see that we had a lot of very professional people there helping us, the law enforcement, DA, person in recovery. You can see Gordon Smith there, counselors, fire department. And then here's some examples of projects. So top left corner, there's that Seventh Wish book the language arts teachers used along with the companion book. And then they learned the inverted pyramid for newspaper writing. Below is an example of one of the graphs that students in math class would analyze. Top right, those are neurons. We used all of these awesome resources from Ruth's Reusable Resources. And when they learned about the brain, then they got to create their own neuron. And we talked about how messages are sent. And then students also in science class made science infographics where they chose a fact they had learned about the opioid epidemic, and then they made an infographic to put up in the school. So the culminating event is when we showcase those newspaper front pages. We have that real DeLorean time machine, and it's in the cafeteria. Guests travel 2 very different paths, a bright side adorned with flowers and colorful decorations, and a dark side with pill bottles, tipped trash cans, and an array of garbage. You can see pictures here. We had signs outside, and then as they came in, we had the bright future and the dark future. Those are some of the other teachers that helped plan this and create it. We've got Doug Elder, Gwen Roberts, and then myself. And then these pictures are of that dark future. You can see we used a black tablecloth with different candies like Good and Plenty and Tic Tacs, some plastic containers that looked like pill bottles, syringes. There was trash on the floor. The lights were turned off, and it really looked dark and abysmal. And we had, gravestones and skeletons. And the students stood by their newspapers, and when people came in from the public, they would stop and pick their newspapers up and read them, and then ask the students questions about what did they learn and what are they going to take forward from this project. These pictures are from the bright future. You can see John Sarbeck. You can see our police officer here from Windham. And this is the bright side. We've got nice bright colored tablecloths, some flower petals and flowers. The lights are on, and that is our bright future. and we have the students talking about their newspaper articles. And then, of course, we have all the students outside with that DeLorean time machine. And what's great about this is some students that just love Back to the Future and they want to come see the time machine and have their picture taken, they come for that, but then they say, oh, look, there's something happening inside of the school. So then they come inside, we lure them in with some refreshments and signs, and then they come and they see what the students have done and they ask questions and they realize what we've done here at our school. And so every year we have more and more people coming. Last year it was over 500 people. So that kind of wraps up our project. And so now we'll go to
some of the
questions.
Yeah, and some of them coming our way. We're trying to 6 feet social distance. Is what kind of data are you doing to prove that it works? We know sometimes that the DARE program has kind of been under that scrutiny. So what have you been doing in those areas?
So we started in 2019. We gave a pre and a post survey asking the same questions about the students' knowledge with opioids and what's happening in our state and why do people come addicted and what can they do if they've used something, how can they get help, how can they get rid of opioids if they find them in their home safely. And so really in the very beginning, students didn't know a lot about any of this. And at the end, they were very knowledgeable and just showing, and we're tracking their knowledge and showing that they then have this knowledge to carry on and to share with their peers and their parents and everybody. We're like, you are the future. You need to go share all of this.
And I would also add too that this is less than 2 years. So it's really hard to track and to have really evidence-based concrete stuff, but that is pre and post knowledge. Okay, so if students are not going to be returning to school, how will this program be adapted for home study?
Oh, I haven't sat with or been on a Zoom call with my colleagues to talk about this. I do know that this past year it was kind of halted. We had our kickoff assembly and we did all of the education piece and we never got to write the newspapers. But I think that this next year, if we're remote learning, I think that there's a way with technology that we could still do something, whether it's PSAs, digital newspapers, creating something to show on the news or on the radio. I know that there's a way that we could do this.
Yep. How do you handle students that come to you with concerns about themselves and families? And I know even after the kickoff assembly, a lot of them came up and talked.
It's amazing how many families this really touches. And every year we have students with personal connections that struggle. And we always bring in guidance in our social workers and we let them know that there are safe people for you to talk to. We had some students that really felt compassionate after hearing the person from recovery and wanted to make a connection and talk to them about this is what's happening in my family. And so just really using guidance and our social workers as much as we can, because we know that substance abuse is everywhere and it's going to be really personal and it's going to be rough for some students, but then they end up talking to us and they feel like it's okay and it takes away that stigma that it's like, well, this is really happening to a lot of people, so we can talk about it and we can support you.
And this isn't a question, but it's a really good point, is that stigmatizing words, and I know that we're rushing through this program, but it's better for us to use substance misuse versus substance use and to avoid the word addiction. So thank you for bringing that to our attention. I don't see any other questions. There is somebody who said, I love this idea. But is there any other questions that anyone would have for us? All right, I think we're good. And thanks once again for letting us share. Oh, how about other schools use this curriculum?
So this past year, I presented at Actum, which is a technology conference for the state. And after that, I had some teachers from Sacopee Valley Middle School come to our school, and I photocopied resources, and I got them the kickoff video, and I sent them away with pamphlets, and they were all ready to do it. And unfortunately, with COVID, I don't think that they were able to. But there is at least one other school that wants to pick this up, and I would be happy to help anybody who's interested in implementing it at their school. It's been so successful, and I don't think I said this in the presentation, but use such a mature topic and something that is so relatable for so many students. They just really, I can't get over what they're able to produce. Students that are struggling writers come out with the most beautiful published newspapers, and they're so proud of themselves. And it's just simply amazing, what they're able to do. And I know they're going to come, look back at 7th grade, and this is what they're going to remember, this authentic project-based learning. And so really, we were able to captivate all of our students, and it was just amazing to see what they were able to create in the end. It was so empowering.
Yeah, and as a bystander who did not create the project, I was so impressed with that. These kids were engaged, they were excited, they wanted to go out and talk about it, and they definitely were equipped with the information, whether what they do with it or not. They definitely knew all about opiates. And I would talk about, let's see, it was Dr. Vivek Murthy this morning was commenting on how service is a great antidote. And I think that's what you're hitting on, is it was a great service for them, and they felt like they were part of it and they were pivoting that. So very inspiring. I think, I don't see, oh, wait a minute. How can we get this in the Lewiston district?
So all of the information that is in the PowerPoint that I shared, it has my email and everything. I have curriculum packets. If someone emails me, I can send out the packet that has the roadmap, the standards, what to do, the video. I have it all, and I'm happy to share it with anybody that wants it.
And the PowerPoint has been shared with this conference, so you can access that at any time.
Yeah, and definitely email me any questions. I'll come to your school. You can come to my school back when we're actually in school. And I'm happy to help anybody that's interested.
Okay, I think that's it. And I don't know if we have any more time.
We have a little more time if there's more questions.
Okay. We can twiddle. I could tap dance if you'd like, but I don't see any. What? Okay. How do you approach teens and alcohol?
And this was more of an opioid project.
Yeah, and there were actually two projects that were in this school at the particular time. One was a vaping project, and the other one chose opiates. But I don't know why you couldn't take the same theme and the same concepts and the same rubrics and everything else and just switch it to alcohol or any other substance, to tell you the truth. So, all right, any more? This is our moderator, Lorraine. Nope, that's the one we just read. Okay. Good. Yep, we just answered that.
All right.
All right. So you really don't want to hear me sing. So I think we are done at this point.
Awesome. Well, thank you for, being here and listening and learning. And I'd be happy to help anyone. Just simply shoot me an email.
And it really is the goal to get this in every school in Maine. So yay.